spent time in depth talking about each of the tables. I told you that I go through those tables and I spend a lot of time examining each of those tables. What I do after that is I just go back and I skim the results. And you can see here that much of the results are presented in the same way that I just went through the tables. So in this first paragraph, what the authors are presenting are information or results from Table 1. Again, much of those details are related to the descriptive characteristics of the samples, and they point out much of the same detail that I had noticed when I was reading in both cohorts. Frequency, fried food consumption was related to younger age, lower physical activity, higher BMI, and prevalence of smoking. So they're just pointing out much of the same information that I observed as well when I was reading those tables as well. As they continue on, here you can see it's bolded here, so I know this particular paragraph is talking about type 2 diabetes. Again, that's all the information related to fried food consumption and type 2 diabetes. And you can see here some of what they were saying is, okay, there's a relationship between type 2 diabetes and fried food consumption. And then the association was attenuated after you adjusted for some of those mediator factors. Table 3 is the same, except that we're talking about coronary heart disease. Again, it says here these relationships, they present some of those relationships, and then it says mostly attenuated, especially after adjusting for these particular mediators. Finally, the authors make a comparison of the results between type 2 diabetes and coronary heart disease. That's going on here. And finally, the last paragraph is what is really the most interesting to me. Remember at the start I said when I look at the results section, I want to make sure that the authors have fairly represented and reported their results, which they've done in the beginning of all of these paragraphs or in these previous paragraphs. What the authors do in this last paragraph, and the primary reason that I go back and look at the results section, is to see if they did any additional analyses that weren't presented formally in a table. And what these are here are sensitivity analyses. And these are just some additional analyses above and beyond what the authors presented in tables 2 and 3. And what they are examining, what the purpose of this is to do is, okay, we observed a relationship between fried food consumption and type 2 diabetes and to a lesser extent coronary heart disease. But can that be explained by other variables such as trans fat and polyunsaturated fat, other dietary quality issues? And it says here, neither stratified analyses by these factors or by type of frying oil provided additional information. So essentially, they conducted all of these analyses. They didn't find any these additional analyses didn't lead them to any different conclusion. Now, one of the important things and take-home messages from all of these results, which I know would be extremely overwhelming to a person the first time they're reading a nutrition epidemiology study, but it is a really important point that I want to hit home at this moment. There's a lot of different type of research that's out there, and typically the gold standard is some sort of randomized control trial where you randomize 2 groups of individuals and then follow them over time to see if they develop the disease. In epidemiology, we often rely on these observational studies, and because they're observational studies, they are not quite the gold standard. And it doesn't mean that information from these observational studies is not as meaningful. In fact, they can be just as meaningful as information that comes from randomized control trials where everything is more tightly regulated. The issue with observational studies is that people are inherently different, as we established already in Table 1. What is incredibly important as epidemiologists is we can try to adjust or control for all of these extraneous variables through lots of data analytics and all of these data methods. And once we adjust for these particular factors, we can come to very strong conclusions as well. But it does rely on a lot of models. So in this particular analysis, they did 4 models plus additional sensitivity analyses. And because I know they went through all of these painstaking models, I know that the results are fairly sound.